Inside the demon realm, where a giant castle sits, the warrior Vermoth and his 4 comrades venture into the castle to subdue the demon kings. They had previously slain 3 of the 5 demon kings, and only 2 remained. A horde of demons swarmed them, and Vermoth with just 1 slash of his sword cleared the way instantly. This is the power of the great Vermoth. A mage walks behind him and says that, against this many, she can most definitely use her powers. She does so, and countless elements pop out of nowhere, clearing the way. This is Saya the Wise. A priestess attempts to bless everyone with her holy magic, and that's when a demon attacks her, but it seems that she's not that defenseless. Aeneas the Faithful, the burliest of the group, attacks with a giant axe, and with just 1 swing he butchers most demons in his path. A rain of blood and body parts washes over him. The brave, the last person in the group, bearing quite a lot of scars, demands Vermoth stop going ahead and makes his way through the demons. This is Hamel the Foolish. He was always jealous of Vermoth and considered him his rival, but nobody really recognized that. Having cleared all of the fodder, the party looks around for potential clues. That's when Hamel spots that Vermoth is in danger and at the last second jumps in front of him, taking the attack fully. The one who attacked seems to be a powerful demon, and Hamel falls down as this attack has proved fatal. The demon attacks Vermoth in the same way, but now prepared, he dodges and with 1 swift move cuts him in half. The party rushes to Hamel's side, and Vermoth looks down, noting that he didn't need to die like that. Hamel says that this death is honorable, and until this very moment, which would become his last, he regretted his past, as he wasn't honest with his friends. Hamel reaches his hand forward and demands Vermoth defeat the Demon King. Vermoth grabs his hand and swears in his warrior's name that all of the demon kings shall be massacred. Hamel smiles with a certain regret and makes his peace with everyone. He asks Aeneas to pray for him. He says to Hamel that he's the bravest warrior there is, and when he turns to Sia, he notes that he always liked her. That's when we find out this was just a story, a boy with gray hair and yellow eyes red, who says that he never said he liked Saya. This is just pure fiction. Every time he reads this nonsensical book, it gets him extremely angry. Which person wrote this like a children's book? If only the author weren't anonymous, he would be able to show him a thing or two. He picks the book back up and wonders why everyone has such great titles like the Wise or the Great, yet he was the Foolish. Was this perhaps written by some guy he pummeled 300 years ago? The same goes for his companions as well. Why didn't they do anything to this book? But it's fair, considering that they would never think the once dead Hamel would reincarnate like this, with all his memories intact. Hamel died in the middle of subjugating the Demon Kings 300 years ago, and was reincarnated as a descendant of Vermoth. Now he goes by Eugene Lionheart, and he's 13 years old. While he was still alive, Vermoth had many concubines aside from his first wife. Eugene finds this strange, as he wasn't the type to chase women needlessly. Did he perhaps change his mind? But it wouldn't be so bad, as everyone has needs, so he gets it. The only families considered direct descendants are the children of the first wife. Even with the same surname, which is Lionheart, Eugene's family is considered an indirect branch. These types of families are forbidden from training their mana and from using real swords before the blood sacrifice ritual. For a 13-year-old, he's quite buff, and he thinks that today is the last time he uses a wooden sword. He trains with his sword, and his movements are extremely fast. Not long after beginning to train, he snaps the dummy in 2. His father looks at this with a scared expression and notes that this is not the first time he has broken one of these. Eugene turns to him and his father notices how muscular he is, quite scary for a 13-year-old. Eugene may be his son, but sometimes he's scared of him, as he doesn't act or speak like a child. There is no innocence left in those eyes of his, and even though he lost his mother at a very young age, he has not once missed her. Eugene says that the blacksmith in this town is utter trash, and selling low-quality garbage like this should be considered a crime and punished accordingly. His father coughs and says that he will give him a warning, but on the note of things to do, the blood ritual is tomorrow. Eugene thinks that this blood ritual of theirs is a dumb Lionheart tradition, held once every 10 years. Every child between 10 and 15, whether from the direct branch or otherwise, gathers at the main family residence for the ritual. There they compete in a sort of trial to find out who is really worthy of the Lionheart surname, but the main branches have an advantage, as they are allowed to train with real weapons and mana from a young age, so they are basically making sure the main family does better, and that the branch family stays at their level. The father looks at the dummy and thinks that this son of his has such talent that he cannot imagine him being his son, and if only he were born into the main family, but no, if only he weren't this talented just like him, he wouldn't have to see and feel the difference between reality and his fate. Eugene asks what happened for his father to have such a sad expression, but his father dismisses it as nothing. Eugene sighs and thinks that he's probably beating himself up for not being a good father. The father suddenly grabs him by the shoulders and demands he never compete with the children from the main family, as however talented he really is, he won't match the power of those kids who have trained with swords and mana for a long time. Eugene smiles and says that he won't, but this is a lie, as this is just an easy win, considering he's basically fighting some 10-year-olds. He spots another dummy and while walking to it thinks that in this blood ritual there will be 3 from the main family and 6 from the branch family. One of the 3 children from the main family is the son of the first wife and the other 2 are twins from a concubine, so aside from the 2 high-authority branch families, the rest can be considered losers. Eugene raises his sword in the air and destroys yet another dummy in a single blow. Now he really wants to see how good the descendants of Vermouth really are. Tomorrow arrives, and while Eugene takes the carriage to the ritual, he thinks back. When he was Habel in his past life, he thought of himself as a genius. Things were easy to learn for him even as a child and his improvement was fast compared to others. But this didn't stop Vermouth from critiquing his technique, noting that if he tried harder he would be much stronger. Habel replied that he was doing his utmost and that not everyone is a genius like Vermouth. The only real problem he had was that he wasn't a genius, but someone close to him was skilled with both swords and magic. Vermouth bore the nicknames the God of War and the Master of All. He was great. He was formerly just a mere duke in his homeland, the Ke Empire, but retired from his position and was praised as a warrior until the end. And the other companions of his. Saya the Wise took the position of Magic Tower Master and is the youngest master of all time in the Mage Kingdom of Eroth. Anis the Faithful, who was extremely rotten inside, is now called a saintess in the Holy Empire of Eris, and there's even scripture about her teachings. The Brave surprisingly managed to make his own kingdom, which he sadly named after himself. So naturally, one is forced to think they had pretty good lives until they died. So why is the Demon King still breathing? Back then, Vermouth definitely swore that he would destroy all of the Demon Kings, the shameless bastard. Hamel originally died at the Demon King of Incarceration's castle. Vermouth seems to have made a promise to that Demon King after Hamel's death. Because of that certain promise, the war with the Demon Kings came to an end, and the world has been at peace ever since. 300 years later, a man who's also inside the carriage with him, Lord Gordon, notes that he must be quite nervous, but if he is, he will struggle when he actually meets the main family. Eugene thanks him for the advice, and Gordon says that from here on it's all Lionheart property, but he doesn't need to prepare to get off as the main residence is still quite far away. Eugene wonders why he's so smug, considering that this isn't even his property. He says that it must be inconvenient if it's this large, and Gordon notes that there are several warp gates scattered about, so it's actually pretty okay. Eugene wants to ask why he wasn't allowed to use one of those, but he can already predict the answer and would rather just shut up and smile. After a while they arrive at the main family residence, which is quite big with shiny gold all around, but Eugene is prepared. They walk toward the main building and Eugene isn't even surprised that he didn't get a welcome ceremony. Vermouth's Lionheart, the only people allowed to have the lion crest on their left chest are those from the direct bloodline. He asks Gordon if any of his relatives have arrived and he notes that Eugene is the first, so they should move to the guest house. A maid by the name of Na greets him and says that she will be attending to his every need during his stay. If there is ever anything he wants, all he needs to do is ring this bell. Eugene is thankful they at least gave him a personal maid, and he asks about her age. She says that she's 16 and that she has only just finished her training period. Eugene smirks and thinks that whoever assigned this inexperienced maid to him must be trying to start a problem if he were to lecture the inexperienced maid for a mistake, but it doesn't matter who thought of the idea as they are boldly trying to harass him. He asks when the others will arrive, and she says that they should be here within the next 4 days at the latest. He gets up and asks her to guide him to the training grounds. Nez is kind of surprised, but she still does so. Outside of the main building, two main family children talk about Eugene and how he's from a small country town and probably trains with rakes instead of swords. The boy says that his carriage must stink because of how he lives, and even if he's a relative, he would still have to pay for damaging the main family residence, right? The girl says that he's absolutely correct, so they must go and scold him. The boy says that they are just giving him a warning and demands that the girl Seal follow him. Another main family kid looks out of the window at them, but that's when Seal notices and glares at him with the eyes of a beast, causing him to back away. Eugene begins training with a spear, and while doing so he notes that he was in no way lazy in his past life as Hamel when it came to training. However, this new body has been furiously trained since he reincarnated. No matter how much he pushes it, he hasn't gotten sick once and his injuries heal extremely quickly. This body of Vermos descendant is capable of things he could only dream of. Now looks at him training and is mesmerized to think he would be capable of moving this fast with sandbags on his arms and a spear. That's when she hears someone ask what this guy is doing, and she recognizes the siblings, Cayenne and Seal, also asking what she's doing there. Cayenne repeats his question, "What is that guy doing there?" Eugene stops his training and says it's very clear what he's doing. Practicing the spear. He also calls him an idiot. Seal pushes her brother to do something, as that country kid just called a main family member an idiot. Cayenne gets angry and demands an apology. Eugene instantly apologizes, leaving him quite speechless. He says that it wasn't sincere at all. He needs to bow down with sincerity, then apologize. Eugene says that they must be the same age, so why should he bow down? If they are friends, that is. Cayenne asks who would dare consider them friends, and says that even if they are both Lionhearts, they are not equals. Seal reminds him about the carriage, and Cayenne begins berating Eugene, demanding that he clean the carriage he came in as it probably stinks from all the farm animals he must have taken care of. Eugene just looks at this excuse of an insult, and asks Nera if she's his personal servant. She confirms this, and he says that she should clean the carriage instead of him. Nera doesn't know what to do, and Cayenne snaps, saying that he told him to clean it specifically, so how dare he order a servant to do it? Is he really disrespecting the order of Cayenne Lionheart? Eugene introduces himself and Seal does so as well. Cayenne says there's no point in being nice to trash like him, and since he ignored a direct order, he has dishonored him, so a duel must take place. Eugene smirks and says that he shouldn't throw that word around so easily, as it bears a heavy burden. He just wants to continue training, so why can't they leave? Cayenne asks if he's scared. That's when Eugene's expression changes. Cayenne insists he must really be scared, right? In that case, he should bow his head and apologize for what he's done. Eugene says that he's in no way scared and also doesn't want to duel or apologize. Cayenne mocks him, saying that he doesn't want to do anything, so is he just going to run away? His parents probably didn't teach him what honor truly is. That's when Eugene begins dropping his arm weights, and Cayenne asks what he's doing. Eugene notes that he wanted a duel and that's what he'll get, so he should throw the damn handkerchief already. Eugene continues to strip, and it seems that even the vest he was wearing was also heavy. Cayenne can only stare at how many weights this guy had, thinking that they were only for show up until now, but now he can't back down as he's the one who challenged him to a duel. Seal would make fun of him for the rest of eternity if he were to back down. He also must punish Eugene for tainting his honor. He throws the handkerchief in Eugene's direction and demands that the duel commence. Eugene finally takes off the final weight, and when the handkerchief falls to his face, he accepts. In that very second, Eugene strikes Cayenne instantly in the gut, ending the fight in just one blow. Seal rushes to her brother's side but backs away when she sees how much he's vomiting. She turns her attention to Eugene and says that he's a coward and that was in no way an honorable duel. Eugene replies that there was no cowardice at all, as the duel started when the handkerchief was thrown, so it's Cayenne's fault for letting his guard down. Seal can't deny this and instead says that he must have trained in mana, right? Eugene notes that the branch lines aren't allowed to train with mana until after the success ritual. Seal doesn't believe it and calls him a liar, saying there's no way he could swing something so heavy without mana, and the attack he performed was too fast. Even if Cayenne were on full guard, he wouldn't have been able to do anything. Eugene smirks and says that her eyes aren't just for show, after all. She notes that his mouth is quite foul, and he says he's already heard that one plenty. But it's also not like her brother got beaten without putting up a fight. When his attack reached him, Cayenne instinctively dodged backwards to reduce the damage. That's nothing short of amazing, given that he doesn't have any real experience yet. Eugene notes that this guy has potential but is not strong enough to be considered a descendant of Vermouth. Cayenne gets up, and with heavy breath calls Eugene a coward. Eugene says that they really are siblings, considering they say the exact same things. He walks toward him and notes that if he's an honor-bound descendant of the Lionheart family, he should humbly admit defeat after losing. Cayenne becomes embarrassed, and Eugene thinks that maybe he should have held back a little, as this is the child of the patriarch. Won't they do something to punish him? That's when a man rushes in with a stern face to see what's going on. Eugene notices the lack of a lion on his chest, so he's probably just a knight hired by the family, and pretty skilled at that. Cayenne calls him by his name. Hizar rushes to Cayenne's side, noting that he lost to a country person like that guy. He reminds him that he challenged Eugene to a fair duel and lost. Hizar looks at Eugene and introduces himself as the one in charge of instructing Cayenne. Eugene introduces himself as well and says that he's from Gidal. Hizar notes that this is where Jar's family is, and Eugene confirms that Jar is his father. Hizar demands to know what happened. Eugene replies that Cayenne simply picked a fight with him and also insulted his father. Cayenne denies this, but Eugene says that Cayenne told him he wasn't taught honor by his father and also called him a coward. All of these were insults to him, and to his father. Weren't they reason enough to accept a duel? Hizar thinks that all of these are valid reasons, and takes Cayenne away, noting that they should get his injuries treated as soon as possible. While leaving, Seal waves Eugene goodbye and he does the same. A few days pass. While having a very large meal, Na offers Eugene the information he requested. Dia and Hansen and Jules are planned to arrive tomorrow at noon, while Gargas and Desira plan to come that evening through a warp gate. Eugene thinks they're arriving faster than expected, and the success ritual will commence soon. He walks out of the dining hall and apologizes to Vermouth, saying he's going to be messing with his descendants from now on, so he hopes he won't be upset about it. But it's not like Eugene wanted to become one of his descendants. It was just a damn reincarnation after all. Cayenne is interrogated by his mother, the second wife of the main family, Amiala. She asks if her son really lost against someone from a branch family. Hizar confirms it. She demands Cayenne come next to her. She strikes him with a fan in the same place he got hit and asks if he really lost in a single strike. Cayenne says that she's hurting him, but she demands he stop complaining and asks Hizar if it's true that the kid didn't train with mana. Hizar confirms that Eugene doesn't possess an ounce of mana in his body. She asks Seal how her brother lost, and Seal explains that just as the duel started, Eugene hit him with the spear. Cayenne tried to retreat, but it was too late. The mother laments the duel being lost in a single blow. Cayenne tries to say something, but she slaps him with all her might and screams, demanding to know how he could lose a duel in front of those lowly beasts and to a child who lacks mana. She says that Cayenne's father will return soon for the ritual, so how is she supposed to face him then? Cayenne begins shaking and apologizes. His mother says she'd like nothing more than to cut Hizar's head off, but her husband favors him. He must train Cayenne once more so that he never disgraces her like this again. With that, they leave, and it seems that Hizar is more of a parent to Cayenne than his own mother ever will be. She eventually calms down and asks Seal to befriend Eugene, or whatever his name was. Seal asks why, and her mother explains that right now he's strong enough to win against her brother. That's why, she says. If it were up to her, she would kill that little cheat. But then she'd become the first suspect, and if a feud were to break out within the family, the guardians of family law would come and she must avoid that at all costs. The mother says she just needs to become friends with him. Seal agrees, saying she also has an interest in Eugene, so she will befriend him. Her mother smiles, an evil expression running across her face. The next day, 3 boys from the branch families arrive at the family residence: Hansen, Danon, and Druez. While Eugene is training, Nala comes up to him with his clothes and notes that everyone has arrived. Eugene says he thought they would come at night, but they are here earlier than expected. Nala notes that the patriarch has also arrived, and Eugene must quickly go but also needs to change clothes. Eugene notes that he'd be late if he were to do that, so he'll just go meet him like this. They all wait at the front gate for the patriarch. Eugene looks around. He spots the second wife, Anaila, and in front of her stands the first wife, the Tanis. That depressed-looking guy is the main family's eldest son and first in line for succession, Ewed Lionheart. The patriarch finally arrives. Gilead, Lionheart, along with his younger brother, Kian. Gilead immediately goes to Aed and asks if his skills have improved. Aed tries to avoid eye contact and says he's trying his best, as usual. This doesn't please Gilead, and he moves on to Cayenne and Seal, noting how much they've grown since he was gone. He also congratulates one of his brothers, Guilford, for having a son and apologizes for not being there to see such a blessing. Guilford says there's no need for such things. Gilead then turns his attention to the children of the branch families. He notes that they should have a meal together, and there they will discuss the blood succession ritual. They sit at the dining table, and Eugene spots the other 2 people who arrived, Gurigas and Desira. He thinks these were the people who came through the warp with the patriarch to attend the ritual, so perhaps they are of higher prestige within the Lionheart branch families. He also notices a man who is clearly not a Lionheart and wonders why he's here. The patriarch and the ritual attendees are supposed to come to this meal. Seal also looks at Eugene curiously and asks her father who that person is. He says that he was planning to introduce him at a later time, but they should do it now. The person gets up and introduces himself as Ian from the Red Magic Tower in Arath. Everyone is surprised, and Eod notes that he's the master of the magic tower, causing Eugene to spit out his drink. They all look at him, and Reborn asks if he's fine, to which he replies yes. Eugene thinks that if Ian is the Red Magic Tower master, then he must be Senya's direct disciple, or rather the disciple of Senya's disciple's disciple. 300 years ago, Senya attained the position of Green Magic Tower Master at the youngest age in Arath's history. Not only had she improved all the spellbooks in Arath, but she had also helped countless disciples of other magic towers and even provided advice to the other tower masters. To this very day, the Green Magic Tower Master and Reborn still consider her their great master. But the most surprising thing to Eugene is that he would meet someone related to his old companion so early. Gillard begins talking to Eugene and notes that he heard about him from the Funes, and that his son dishonored Eugene and his parents. Kayan looks down in shame, and Eugene says that he did, but he holds no real grudge against him. Gillard asks if it's because Eugene won the duel, and Eugene notes that it would have been different if he had lost, because if he were unable to protect his honor, then it would be his duty to at least accept that as fact. Gillard smiles and notes that Eugene is better than his own son. He then starts speaking with Cayenne and notes that he's not ashamed of Cayenne's defeat, but it does shame him that Cayenne is embarrassed by losing and is so worried about how Gillard feels about it. It was a duel that started because of Cayenne's insults in the first place, yet he still hasn't apologized even after losing. Cayenne tries to say something, but Gillard interrupts him and says that he is a Lionheart first and foremost, and that the Great Vermouth is his ancestor. If he truly is someone from Vermouth bloodline, he should act like it and respect not only his own honor but also the honor of others. Cayenne looks at him and with a blush on his face apologizes. Eugene notices how much Cayenne is forcing himself right now, but it doesn't really matter. Gillard says that Eugene's father must be Jared, and he apologizes for not knowing him directly. Eugene says that it's only natural as his family lives in a very rural area, so it's expected that someone like Gillard wouldn't know them. Gillard asks if Eugene's father taught him those moves. Eugene explains that his father instructed him on the basics, but after that he trained on his own. Desira is surprised that he trained by himself, and Gargus is even more surprised that he managed to beat Cayenne. Now Gillard notes that this succession ritual will be an interesting one this time. The food arrives after it is plated and served. Gillard says that the food might not be up to their expectations, but they must be hungry, so they should start eating. After the meal, Gillard notes that the reason he decided to hold this gathering was to share some details about the upcoming ritual. They all eagerly wait for him to speak. He says that although he is the patriarch and it's quite embarrassing to admit, it must be said the blood succession ritual is just too discriminatory. Naturally, it is a tradition of the main family, and children of branch families are not allowed to train with real weapons or mana until after the ritual is over. If the ritual were held under these fair conditions, there would be no way a child from a branch family could beat a child from the main family. In this case, 3 of his own children will be entering. However, he believes it's only fair to evaluate not just his own children but the potential of all children who bear the Lionheart name. The ritual exists to prove to oneself that they are a descendant of the great Vermouth, so it doesn't matter whether that person is from the main family or not. Eugene smirks, and notes that this descendant is much kinder than Vermouth himself. Gillard continues, saying that because of all this he asked for help with the ritual and that's why Roran is here. He gets up and with a flick of his fingers the table transforms into a map of a labyrinth. He says that the ritual will take place in this labyrinth. Everyone will enter from a different entrance and all they have to do is defeat the boss monster in the center. They will also have to avoid traps and defeat any monsters they come across. Naturally, everything that occurs inside the labyrinth is just an illusion made with magic, so it's basically one big mind trick, but they shouldn't falter, as it will feel just like reality. Eugene thinks that Ian is not only using summoning magic but also advanced illusionary magic. No wonder he earned the position of Tower Master. Raytrud continues, and says that if one of them manages to defeat the boss monster, the ritual will come to an end, and everyone will be assigned a point value based on how well they performed. One of them asks if it's okay if they're unable to escape the labyrinth, and Rayron confirms this. If they're too scared, they can simply stay at the entrance. Eugene asks what they get for defeating the labyrinth boss, and Gillard smirks. The winner will be allowed to take anything they want from the main family's underground treasury. Eugene is excited now and finds this amazing. While walking away, he thinks that it should still be easy, and his only real problem is deciding what to choose from the main family treasury. That's when he spots Desira and Gargus, who seem to have been waiting for him. Gargus asks if he really won against Kian, and Eugene confirms it. He then asks if they're done questioning him about useless things. If so, he'll be leaving. Gargus tries to stop him but Eugene just shrugs, not knowing what to say. Eugene makes his way to the training grounds and continues to practice, but he gets interrupted again by Desira and Gargus, who are waiting for him to finish. Desira holding spears in both hands. Eugene wonders why they haven't gone to sleep yet. That's when Gargus walks in front of him and after a short pause rips off his shirt. He begins breathing heavily and flexes all of his muscles, making them glisten. Eugene wonders what just happened, and Gargus notes that Eugene can touch them, but Eugene instantly rejects the offer. Gargus then explains that his family has a secret muscle growth potion that accelerates muscle development depending on training, while not accumulating mana within the body. Naturally, there aren't many side effects. Is Eugene perhaps interested? Eugene asks if Gargus is trying to sell him the potion. Desagra says there is one major side effect. If he consumes it, he will start growing a beard, regardless of gender. She then notes that she heard he used a spear in his battle with Cayenne. So why is he using a sword now? Eugene explains that he uses both swords and spears, which makes Desira think he's just bragging that he's good with most weapons. She throws him a spear which he catches, and says that her specialty is the spear, so they should fight. Eugene thinks that it'll be easier to deal with her than with that potion salesman. He's also curious about how strong the high-ranking kids of the branch families really are, so he accepts the duel. They get into position, and Eugene asks what Gargus is still doing there. Gargus notes that he's the referee even though this is just a simple spar, it still must be fair. Eugene thinks that Gargus is acting like a certain someone. Is he perhaps secretly descended from that meathead? Gargus announces that they'll begin when he says start, and Desira urges him to just do it already. She thinks about Eugene's ability to use both swords and spears, calling it a bad joke. She'll be the one to show him that mastering the spear isn't that easy. Gargus gives the go-ahead, and she rushes in, thinking that the one who strikes first wins. But she suddenly stops, sensing that Eugene is emanating a dangerous aura. It's clear that he has no openings. He asks why she stopped so suddenly, which ticks her off and makes her charge in again. She strikes, but Eugene counters her attack. They continue trading blows. Eugene thinks that considering the lack of mana in her body, she's actually pretty good. She's still quite young, so her potential is infinite, but in her current state she's no match for him. He continues to block and notes that she hasn't hit him even once. She demands that he shut up and thinks that if he believes he can block all her attacks without dodging, it'll cost him dearly. She charges again and they continue exchanging strikes. Eventually she dashes behind him and prepares a mighty blow, thinking he won't be able to block this one. Eugene raises his foot and catches the spear with it. Desira desperately tries to reclaim it, but it's already over. The duel has ended. Eugene Leonhardt has won. Later that night, Gargus wakes Eugene up saying that they should work together. Eugene wonders where Gargus lives to think it's okay to wake someone like that. Gargus says he just wanted to hear Eugene's answer. Eugene notes that Gargus must have heard the details of the ritual earlier, right? Since they're all entering from different entrances, how are they supposed to work together in the first place? Gargus explains that they will all end up in the same place, the center of the labyrinth where the boss monster resides. He says the twins from the main family will most likely work together as well. Eugene asks if Gargus is suggesting that they defeat the boss monster together. Gargus confirms it. Eugene says that he can probably do it by himself anyway. Desira, who had been leaning against the wall this whole time, says that he's just full of himself and foolish, but even she can't deny his strength. She admits that if he were to help them, they would be able to defeat the boss monster with little difficulty. Eugene asks why they're so desperate to defeat that thing. Desira explains that in this ritual where both main and branch families participate, no one from a branch family has ever won. But now they have a chance, if they work together. Doesn't he want to defeat the main family at least once? Anila looks out the window and thinks that Rarian, who also came to help with the ritual, is most likely scouting Eod as his disciple. Since he was young, Eod always preferred reading over being active. Because of this, he has shown strong aptitude for the magic arts. If Eod were to become Rarian's disciple, he would have to leave the family residence. During that time, Cayenne and Seal would grow up a lot, so Eod will too. Basically given up on being the successor. The only real problem she has right now is with the ritual, as her children will forever be called the children of a concubine. They were only able to establish their position because she didn't let this bring them down. But to think her son would lose to a child from a mere branch family, she would rather have Eugene clear the labyrinth the fastest. If he were strong enough to do this, the main family would be put to shame, and Cayenne's defeat would be covered up. 4 days later, the succession ritual is about to commence, and everyone is gathered. Robertan prepares some magic and gives each of them a blue orb. He notes that they will first create their weapons, so everyone should try to mold the light into the weapon they want. They all begin doing so, with Seal being the first to succeed, creating a rapier. She begins testing it out and asks what would happen if it were to break. Robertan says that both the sword and the labyrinth are created with magic, so the sword she has right now can't break inside the labyrinth. She asks if she can make something like an animal instead of a sword. Robertan notes that she could make a doll or a golem but never a living being. Uday asks why they can't, and Robertan explains that it's considered taboo magic. Giving birth to another life is something beautiful, and it is a power that only living beings have. Udiad is quite surprised at his response. Grakers then succeeds in creating his weapon, a giant greatsword. He notes that it's like the greatsword he uses back at home, but more real and less wooden. Jasira wonders who asked, and finally manages to create her weapon, a spear. Everyone else also finishes creating theirs, with most being swords. Eugene, however, also creates a shield. That's when Seal asks what he will do if they meet in the labyrinth. Will he perhaps fight her? Eugene asks the patriarch if fighting is allowed, and he confirms that it is as it's part of the ritual. However, good judgment and cooperation are also very important, as they are a family that all bear the same name. Seal thinks of the Lionheart family and begins smiling at Eugene, who is extremely creeped out by this. With this done, Roberton also gives them necklaces and notes that they are connected to their minds. If they become distressed in the labyrinth, the necklace will react. When that happens, he will consider it a dangerous situation and will intervene. Eugene notes that it's just a safety tool to prevent accidents. Robert also says that if they ever want to get out, they can just tap the necklace and ask for help. With that, everything is prepared, and they can now enter the labyrinth. They will enter through the same gate but will be split up the moment they walk inside. They all head toward the gate and Seal wishes Eugene good luck, to which he reluctantly responds in kind. He walks through and finds himself in a corridor. He thinks that he went through something like this in his past life and that the ceiling is blocked off. He takes a swing with his sword and notes that the space is pretty tight, so it will be difficult to use a weapon with a long reach. That's precisely why he chose a sword and shield, as this basic combination can't be beaten in most situations. He doubts that this challenge will be of any difficulty, as it was just made for kids. With that, he takes his first step into the labyrinth. A few small slimes attack a participant, and he begins flailing his sword around with no rhyme or reason. After he gets stuck to the ground, he desperately asks for help and Roberton appears, teleporting both of them out of the dungeon. An hour after the succession ritual began, 3 had already failed. Gilad looks at them with a certain disappointment in his eyes, and tells them to go rest. He sits down with Roberton and they observe how everyone is doing. They specifically watch Gargus, who swings his giant greatsword around. It often gets stuck, but because of his great strength he pushes through and still manages to do heavy damage. Gillard notes that his movements are a tad awkward, but he's managing just fine as he's not having any real difficulty with the monsters he's facing. He looks at Desira, who begins fighting some slimes. When she finally strikes one, he notes that bladed weapons don't do much against slimes, so she needs to find an opportunity and escape. Gillard thinks that she's quick and intuitive, also prioritizing getting out of the labyrinth more than facing monsters. He looks at Cayenne, who spots some traps and thinks that his mother already got him and seals some maps for several labyrinths before the ritual took place. So they studied them, along with the types of traps that were most likely to be put in place. He picks up a pebble and throws it in front, causing a lot of arrows to shoot out of the wall. Gillard notes that Cayenne is careful and uses this method to evade traps, which is not bad at all. He looks at Seal, who is now fighting a goblin. The goblin attacks, but she dodges swiftly and strikes when she has the chance. She begins making her way to the middle again, but finds herself at a dead end. She notes that she'll just go back to the forked path from earlier. Gillard notes that she's flexible and sensible with her thinking, but she's just as childish. He moves on to Iode, who is confronted by a goblin, but instead of being scared, Iode is amazed at what magic can do. The goblin finally attacks, and after a few blocks, Iode manages to cut him, still amazed at what magic can really become. Roberton looks closer and notes that Iode seems quite interested in magic. Gilad says that he's loved magic ever since he was a child. He used to be taught by a mage from the capital they had invited, but he hasn't really tried to learn much since then. Roberton asks why that is, and Gillard notes that Iode gave up because of the harsh reality. He decided to become the patriarch due to his mother's wishes, and magic proves to be of no advantage when competing for succession. Roberton notes that magic is a difficult journey, despite its countless possibilities. Gillard says that he wishes Ed would actually take that journey if he still has a passion for the magical arts. He won't be able to refuse a position as the disciple of the Red Magic Tower Master. Roberton says that he can't give a straight answer just yet, but he will take Iode along because he knows him. However, if he's not fit to be his disciple, he can't accept him. Gillard agrees, as he had no intention of forcing that upon him. He just wanted to bet on Iode's dreams, that an Iode respects Senya the Wise more than Vermouth, his own ancestor. Roberton notes that he was the same. He much preferred Senya's stories to Vermouth's adventures. Senya always came up with amazing solutions when her comrades were in danger. Gillard knows that he also read that story when he was a child, and truthfully, neither Vermouth nor Senya were his favorites. Robertin asks who it is, but before Gillard can answer, his attention is grabbed by what Eugene is doing, fighting a gigantic troll. The troll tries to bash Eugene into the ground, but he blocks with his shield, allowing him to strike at multiple points. They both watch in surprise, and Gillard finds it nothing short of amazing. Eugene takes down the troll, and Gillard notes that this is Eugene Lionheart. The troll explodes into golden bits, and Gillard is amazed that a 13-year-old who he doubts has ever fought a real troll before wasn't even scared. He was also able to take the troll down cleanly and confidently. Robertin notes that the trolls weren't meant for the kids to fight, but were more like traps they had to avoid, so he's just as surprised. Gillard notes that Eugene is still young, but isn't his talent just exceptional? Robertin says that he already knows they call kids like him geniuses. Rugas also begins fighting a troll, but he's beaten up and most likely on his last legs. Still, he summons the strength to charge in. With a swift dodge, he manages to cut the troll, giving him the opportunity to end the fight. He breathes heavily and roars like a beast before the troll disappears and he collapses. He thinks he can't believe the troll managed to pierce the muscles he's so proud of and break his ribs. Trolls are truly strong. He also got hit by all sorts of traps before fighting the troll. Since he's been hurt this much, he doubts the other kids are less injured than him. Without any strength remaining, he falls unconscious. Cayenne also finds himself near a troll and thinks that there's no way this is a monster they're supposed to take down. He distracts it with a rock and finds the opportunity to run away before it notices anything. That's when Seal finds him and says that they started at entirely different points but still managed to meet. Cayenne says that it just shows how close they are to the center, but this is great as now she can follow him and won't lose her way. She agrees, and Cayenne thinks that since he was humiliated in front of his sister by that bastard, he must take this chance to recover his damaged reputation. Seal notes that, since this is a dungeon, any type of monster can appear, right? Cayenne says that she's correct, but asks why she brought it up. Seal asks if ghosts are included. Cayenne freezes up a bit. With a trembling voice, he asks if she's afraid of ghosts, and says if she is, she shouldn't worry, he will protect her. That's when he turns the corner and Desira appears, covered in a lot of blood. He begins screaming uncontrollably and she does the same, while Seal just watches. Cayenne notices Desira and demands to know why she scared him. She says that he was the one who scared her with his screaming. He then asks why she has so much blood on her. She notes that it's from a trap and thinks that the ambush was a failure, so she needs to retreat. Seal knows that she's running away, and Cayenne thinks he's shown his unsightly side to Seal again. Naturally, he can't forgive Desora. He screams that they should go after her, and they do so, making Desora think that she won't be able to win a 2v1 and also wondering where Gargas is, who has passed out cold. Suddenly a trap activates beneath her, but she finds her footing and manages to make it to the other side. She continues running, and Cayenne wonders if they'll need to take another route because of the hole, but he can't let himself be humiliated in front of Seal any further. He was going to save his mana for the boss, but now that there's no other choice, he'll have to use it. He does so and barely manages to get across. He offers Seal his hand and notes that he will catch her, but she can also use mana and she makes her way over just fine. They continue chasing Desura until the three of them reach the center of the labyrinth, where the boss stands. Eugene asks why the three of them came together, and Cayenne asks what he is doing here. Eugene notes that he was just waiting, curious to see who would manage to get there. First one who arrived. Eugene confirms this, and Desira says that if he got to the center and managed to wait, she's presuming that he reconsidered the offer she and Gargas made and wants to defeat the boss together, right? Eugene knows that they talked about something like that, but he waited to offer all of them a chance at the boss first. He says he would be able to deal with that thing in no time, but it would be unfair if they made the effort of reaching the labyrinth only to arrive at nothing, right? Cayenne is angry at this mockery, and Eugene notes that this beast doesn't attack unless they're in its range, so it's basically just waiting for them. What he's suggesting is that they all fight it in the order of who arrived after himself. First would be Desira, then Cayenne, and after that Seal. Sounds fair, right? Desira asks if he really wants them to fight that gigantic thing alone, and Eugene says that she's also hurt, so if she thinks winning isn't an option, she can just give up. Desira says that she will do it and bandages herself with a handkerchief as she walks toward it. Kian asks why Eugene hasn't fought the boss yet. Eugene says that he will after everyone else is done with it. Kian notes that Eugene might not get the chance, as he will surely defeat the boss by himself. Eugene smiles and says that if Kian really manages to do that, he will give him the utmost respect for the rest of his life. This makes Kian excited, and he demands that Eugene not forget the promise he just made. He sits down and thinks that the Minotaur is a common monster in labyrinths, but it's way bigger than he imagined, and definitely bigger than the troll he met. However, that's the only scary thing about it, as it doesn't seem as hostile compared to a troll or an ogre. With this, he should be able to defeat it in one fell swoop. The Minotaur's eyes open, and it slowly gets up. Desira looks at it, and wonders how she can kill something that huge. However, she has come too far to give up now. She charges in, and the Minotaur immediately tries to squash her. She dodges and swiftly gets back on her feet, allowing her to attack its hand, but the spear isn't going in. She thinks that its hide is way too hard to pierce. That's when the Minotaur grabs her whole, and Desira thinks that this must be the end of her life, but instead it simply throws her back at the group. Seal asks why it did that when it could have just killed her outright. Eugene notes that it's not a real monster, and the battle was already over once she was grabbed, so it let her go. Cayenne gets up as it's his turn now, and notes that he'll show Eugene the difference between a branch family and the prestigious main family. Eugene just smirks, and Cayenne hates his arrogance. Does he really think he can't handle a single oversized cow? He activates his mana and notes that everyone should be watching him. He coats his weapon in mana, and Desira thinks that this must be sword aura, which can cut through anything. But in order to even manifest sword aura, a decade of mana training would be required. She can't believe how far ahead the main family is compared to them. Eugene also finds it impressive that Cayenne can use that at such a young age. Cayenne thinks that he can't maintain the aura for long, but it should be enough to kill the thing in front of him. That's when the aura dissipates, and in a panic he wildly swings the sword around, trying to make it come back. Eugene recalls Gellard's words about how the ritual's purpose is to check the potential of those who hold the blood of Vermouth, and that it doesn't matter if they're from a branch or the main family. Eugene notes that this labyrinth was created by Webtoon, and it appears that he made it in such a way that mana can't be used inside. If nobody can manifest mana in here, then the main family and the branch ones can fight on equal footing. Cayenne is still dumbfounded by what just happened, and Eugene urges him to give up if he thinks he won't win, as he'll just be skipping a beating. Cayenne looks at them, and it's Seal who watches him with a glisten in her eyes. He steels himself and thinks that he doesn't need sword aura to defeat this thing. With that, he valiantly charges in. While the Minotaur tries to grab him, he manages to slash it a few times, but these are just surface wounds. They won't help much. He dodges its hand once again and aims for the leg, but the Minotaur blocks access to it with its knee and manages to grab Cayenne. It throws him away, and Eugene notes that in the end he still lost, right? Cayenne can only look at him, and that's when Seal notes that she doesn't want to fight as she can't use her sword aura. Eugene thinks that she's much smarter than her brother and picks up his weaponry as he makes his way toward the Minotaur. Seal asks if he really thinks he can win. Eugene says that he doesn't have the confidence to lose against such a beast. He arrives in its attack range and wonders how he should put it down. That's when it attacks, but he dodges and attempts to climb its hand. However, he uses its other hand to try and grab him but fails, allowing Eugene to make his way to the top of its head. It tries to punch him, but he moves out of the way, and it ends up punching itself. This stuns the Minotaur for a while, giving Eugene the opportunity to strike repeatedly in the same spot, the neck. They all watch in awe as he does so. Amazement fills Desira as she thinks that he's hitting the same spot. It's the carotid. With one final strike, he makes the beast gush its blood all over the place, and it falls down. This battle has been won. He removes the blood from his sword and asks Kian if he saw that, who doesn't even know what to say. He finally responds that he shouldn't be so proud, as he would have also been able to kill that thing if he had his sword. Eugene thinks that what Kian says is true, but he certainly wouldn't have been able to do it the same way he did. The feeling he holds now is different from fear, and he can't really hold his excitement any longer. What could this feeling really be? The labyrinth slowly begins to dematerialize, and Seal notes that the ritual is officially over. Gillard and Reborn watch as this happens, and Gillard finds it incredible that a child from a branch family no less managed to take down a minotaur all by himself. Raisin sweats a bit and notes that the minotaur is a monster that is difficult to deal with alone. That's why the succession ritual this time was about teamwork, so the children could try and defeat it together in various ways. That's how it was supposed to be anyway. That single child was also able to break through the numerous traps he set with ease. Just who is he? Gillard smiles and notes that Eugene trained a lot, and repeatedly even while being here at the main family residence. He also sent people to Guato, his town, to collect some information on him, and he's also famous for his persistence. This child has an exceptional martial physique, and his personality suits it as well. He's a gem who was only found because of the ritual. Robertson asks if he's not mad. He doesn't mean anything by it, but Eugene stands out far more than Gillard's children. So if there's such a gap already, then once Eugene trains with mana, his strength potential is near infinite. Gillard says that it's a great thing, as because of him the Lionheart name will shine even further. Right? Robertine, with a heavy breath, asks what will happen if Eugene wants to become patriarch. Gillard looks at him silently for a second and notes that it's only fair. The strongest one should become patriarch. If his children can't hold the position, there's nothing they can really do about it. If they are that weak as to have their birthrights snatched away from them, then they didn't deserve it in the first place. Robertson notes that he probably shouldn't talk about this since he's an outsider, and dematerializes the tent they were in. He also says that they've been friends for a long time, so he would at least give him some advice he should adopt that kid. Gillard is surprised by this notion, and Rera notes that a child from a branch family managed to outclass the main family. A lot of branch families will laugh just because of that, and some insidious people will even start gathering together. Gillard thanks him for the idea and says that it is indeed an interesting one, but they should congratulate the children first and foremost. That's when the kids make their way out of the forest. They all line up, and Gillard looks at Ayod, who couldn't even make it to the center because of how distracted he was by the various magics around him. Gillard is a bit disappointed that his curiosity came first for him instead of proving his worth as the ritual intended. On the other side, Ciel and Cian made it to the center and weren't held back by the traps and monsters thrown at them. They couldn't defeat the Minotaur outright, but they are still immature, and that can be made up for in the future as they age. He congratulates everyone for doing well and says that he watched all of them throughout their journeys and is proud. He starts speaking with Eugene and notes that out of all the children who were in the ritual, he is by far the most impressive. Eugene thanks him for the praise, and Gillard says that his methods for dealing with traps and monsters were nothing short of amazing, especially the one-on-one fight he had with the troll, which he got out of with no injuries. This surprises Gargus, who wonders how Eugene managed to not sustain any injuries with that scrawny body of his. He thinks it's quite unfortunate, as if Eugene had taken the muscle growth potion he offered him, he would have been able to build a temple from his body. Robertson says that, if he's honest, he thought this ritual would have taken at least a few days, but it seems he underestimated them quite a bit. He thinks that even though they are quite young, they are still descendants of the great bloodline, and it certainly shows. It is also quite fortunate that he had the opportunity to watch these gemstones which have such a shine to them. Gillard urges everyone to rest, as he would have liked to welcome them with a banquet, but they passed everyone's expectations, so he didn't have time to prepare one in advance. He asks Bertrand to take the children back, and he begins doing so. But that's when Gillard calls Eugene to his side, as he will be coming with him. This catches Ciel's attention, and she asks if he's going to give him the present now. Gillard says that there's no reason not to, and it's more exciting for the both of them if he gives it sooner. Ciel thinks that she pleaded with her father many times to let her into the underground treasury, but he never allowed her in. Now she can only look at the both of them while they go. Walking toward it, Gillard notes that it seems like Eugene can use various weapons. Eugene says that he's just overestimating his abilities, but Gillard disagrees. He used a sword and shield in the labyrinth and a spear to battle Cayenne and Desira. Eugene thinks that Gillard found out about his match with Desira, which isn't surprising as he's the patriarch after all. Gillard notes that the sword is the weapon that symbolizes the Lionheart family now, but their ancestor Vermouth wielded multiple weapons and skillfully at that. That's why he was called the God of War and the Master of all. But Vermouth wasn't the only one who was able to wield various weapons. His companion, Hemel, was the second most skilled after Vermouth, of course. Eugene clears his throat and notes that, in the children's book he read, Hamel was called foolish. Gillard laughs and says that he also read that book when he was young. But if it weren't for Hamel causing trouble, the book would have been quite boring. Right? And if he's honest, he liked Hamel more than Vermouth. This surprises Eugene and he wants to know why. Gillard notes that he liked how Hamel was more human compared to the untouchable Vermouth. As shown in the book quite often, Hamel always felt inferior to Vermouth, but he was never discouraged. Instead, he always overcame his shortcomings, and in his final moments he sacrificed himself for his companions and the whole world. Eugene thinks that children's books emphasize such things to teach kids values. He smiles and says that he also liked Hamel the most, thinking that if something feels good it should be appreciated. They arrive at the vault, and the guards bow down as they let Gillard in. They make their way down the steps, and Gillard says that Eugene is the first person who isn't a patriarch to enter this place. Eugene asks if it's really okay for him to be there and Gillard confirms it, saying he already promised something from here. The situation has also been discussed with the elders of the Senate. Eugene knows about them. They are the old lions of Lionheart, including the previous patriarch. It's something even people with great status in the branch families are affiliated with. He asks what the contents of the treasury are, and Gillard notes that its inheritance has been accumulated over hundreds of years. Among them are also things left behind by the great Vermouth himself. Eugene asks if the sacred sword is also being kept here and Gillard confirms this, but he can't have it, as it's the symbol of the Lionheart bloodline and nobody can own it. Eugene notes that it's quite unfortunate, and Gillard says that's not the only reason after Vermouth passed away nobody has been acknowledged by the sacred sword. Eugene wonders what that's about, and Gillard notes that he will understand when he holds the sword. They arrive at the door of the vault, and Gillard bites his own finger, placing a few droplets of blood into a container. The door opens. Gillard urges Eugene to enter alone, saying he will wait here. If he were to enter with him, Eugene would be conscious of his presence, and wouldn't be able to choose what he truly wanted. Eugene thanks him for the consideration and walks in. The door closes behind him, and he smirks. His first objective is to grab the sacred sword. This sword has existed since the mythical ages in the Holy Empire of Erois, and is known as an item bestowed by God. The sword, which had been sealed for a long time in the central temple, recognized Vermouth as its owner instantly. This sword pierced the heart of Helmand's fifth-ranked demon king of slaughter 300 years ago, but after that it was basically an oversized torch. He tries to yank it out of the ground, but it doesn't budge. Eugene thinks that even if he somehow managed to draw it, he couldn't keep it, so he should give up and look for something else. He begins to look around and spots the Devourer sword. It's a sword that devours the mana of whatever it kills and makes it its own. It can also split strong magic with a single hit, but the reason Vermouth was able to handle it was because he was also a talented mage, so it's too much for Eugene currently. There are many familiar weapons in here. The dragon spear Carbos, a weapon comparable to a dragon's breath, though quite slow to warm up. The windstorm sword Wyand, blessed by the king of wind spirits. The lightning bow Peroria, which can call down a lightning strike no matter the distance. The sword of no return Zel, which when imbued with magic splits into pieces and forms a formidable whip, and the shield of Gadon, which can send any attack it receives into the void. There's nothing here that would really disappoint him if he were to pick them. But is this really all they have? What about the demonic spear or the moonlight sword? But it's been 300 years, so naturally they took the most overpowered weapons for themselves, the greedy bastards. While thinking, he comes to the conclusion that the most suitable weapon for him now would be Wunt. With it he can summon wind spirits, and even their king, if he had enough mana. Spirit magic is hard to get into, as without talent not even a skilled mage can control a single low-grade spirit. However, with want, that shouldn't be an issue. Still, since he's in the treasury, he should look around more, as he might find something else. He gets to the section where accessories and jewels are being held and spots a necklace, which he immediately snatches it. This is the same necklace he wore in his past life as Hamo. It's a keepsake from his parents who were both butchered by a monster. Of course, he had his revenge, but even so, he wore this necklace until the day he passed away. Why would this be here? Did Vermouth really recover his body? But he also wouldn't have just left it there to rot. The promise made between the demon of incarceration and Vermouth brought peace to the world, but 2 of the 5 demon kings are still alive in Helmuth. Because of this, they all promised to kill the 5 demon kings together. But just what kind of promise did they make, and why leave his keepsake here? Just what was Vermouth thinking? Perhaps it was his fault, as maybe there wasn't enough manpower to defeat the demon kings after his death. He doesn't need or want to resent Vermouth and his companions. There must be a good reason they didn't kill the demon kings. There are many weapons he would like from this treasury, but he can't leave this Hamel's keepsake to gather dust in the Lionheart treasury. He comes out of the vault and Gillard is surprised by his choice. Eugene notes that this is what he liked the most. Gillard says there are countless treasures in there, but Eugene replies that they are too much for him to handle currently. Gillard asks to have a look at the necklace and notes that it's just a simple, crude necklace with nothing special about it. So why would it be in the treasury? He points it at the lion's head, and its eyes emanate red light. Gillard notes that this necklace isn't registered in the treasury and shouldn't have been there. He adds that the necklace holds no real value. It wouldn't even fetch enough to buy a cheap sword. Does Eugene really want such a thing? Eugene says that he does, and Gillard responds that it can't be helped then. However, he will have Roberti analyze it since it came from an unknown source and might be imbued with magic. Eugene asks if he can have it afterward, and Gillard promises that it will end up in his hands. He also says that since things turned out this way, and this item is technically not a Lionheart treasure, why doesn't Eugene go back inside and choose another treasure? Eugene asks if he can really do that, and Gillard confirms it. He promised Eugene could choose one treasure from the vault. Eugene thanks him and immediately goes back in, thinking that Gillard is surprisingly flexible, a surprising characteristic for a descendant of Vermouth. But this time, there's no need to hesitate, and so he grabs one reed. He draws it from its sheath, and thinks that now this sword is his. That night, Desira bashes him for not choosing a spear, as he's extremely good with that type of weapon. Eugene says that it was his choice and he's good with swords, as she saw during the ritual. Gargus thinks the sword is too light and says that considering Eugene's strength, he should have picked something heavier like a hammer or an axe. But now that the succession ritual is over, why doesn't Eugene come back with him? He'll provide all the muscle growth potions Eugene could ever want. Eugene screams that he doesn't need them, and Desira demands he stop talking with this meathead and draw his sword. Eugene does so, and she asks what kind of sword it is. He notes that it's Wyneed, and according to the patriarch, the blessing of the Wind Spirit King is imbued within. It can most likely summon him after Eugene gains enough mana. Desira says it's a cool sword but still thinks he should have chosen a spear. Eugene says there were also a lot of spears in there, and she asks if he saw them. The dragon spear is Karbos, which apparently lets out a fire breath. Eugene lies and says he doesn't know what it looks like. She then asks about the demonic spear Risos, which was the strongest weapon Vermouth used. Gargus says he also knows of that spear. It was used by the Demon King of Cruelty. This makes Eugene think 300 years ago, there were 5 Demon Kings in Helmuth. Rank 1 Demon King of Ruin. Rank 2 Incarceration. Rank 3 Frenzy. Rank 4 Cruelty. Rank 5 Slaughter. Gargus notes that Desira is wrong. The strongest weapon used by Vermouth was the pulverizing flail Zigal Ard, which was used by the Demon King of Slaughter. They start bickering about their favorite items, and Eugene thinks that he also didn't see that flail in the treasury. Of the many weapons Vermouth used, the ones he got from the Demon Kings were the spear and the flail. They're both way too dangerous to be held in the treasury, so maybe they were sealed somewhere else. The other two are still arguing, and Eugene notices how childish they are, so he leaves. He notes that both the spear and flail are great weapons, so it's hard to say which is better. But if someone were to ask him which weapon used by Vermouth was the best, he could answer in a second: the Moonlight Sword. It's a fragment shaped like a sword that was sealed away even in the demon realm. Both the demon king of cruelty, who used the spear, and the king of slaughter, who used the flail, were defeated by the Moonlight Sword. He looks at Wanda and thinks that this is the first real weapon he's using in this life. Gargus and Desera look at him, and he begins practicing with it almost as if performing a dance. They're both mesmerized by how beautiful it is. In Dillard's office, Roberti analyzes the necklace but finds no magic within. Is this thing really from the treasury? Dillard confirms it, and Rierun asks if Eugene is just playing a prank. Dillard notes that he would have no reason to, as if he didn't.